I'm doing a little Bible talk today or whatever. I've been posting a lot of stuff about Christ and Christianity on Steem. It haven't been getting the best response, but that's okay. I didn't really expect that anyway. So um, today I just want to talk about how Christ has to do with economic prosperity and how actually it's like a blueprint for economic prosperity in a lot of ways. I think a big problem in our society is in our indulgement, entertainment, and in fantasy, to the point where we do not have the laborers or the workers or those grasped into reality, knowing to feed themselves, knowing to work the land for economic prosperity. Instead, people are indulged into fiction and fantasy. For example, through our entertainment, if you watch 2 hours a day of TV, you are basically breaking a commandment 2 hours a day because you're staring upon a graven image or a false idol. When someone takes a character that is untrue or is not real, you're partaking usually in a form of entertainment. Not that all entertainment per se is bad. I'll get into that later, but it's just the idea that we as a society are so consumed through fantasy and fiction, that in which that is not real, versus the land and of nature and of things like that, and of food, what actually feeds our belly. I also wrote some commentary on some passages from the book of Matthew, and how everything that is of the nourishment of the body is good, for it progresses mankind. Like, for example, technology that maybe is used for farming or agriculture or transportation. For example, cars and things like that. Everything that is for the nourishment of the body is good, but things like hoverboards and like certain technology, they do not nourish the body. They do not progress the nourishment of the body. And it is only that progresses the nourishment of the body, and the Word of God, which then progresses, the nourishment of the body, in the sense that it pulls you away from fiction, away from fantasy, away from those things that are not real. This entertained society, nothing is getting done. If so many kids, didn't go into the fantasy sort of the college life. Like, to me, the college world isn't the real world. It's more of a fantasy. It's non-existent. The idea that, this high knowledge is attainable. And it's also the idea of how many kids are filled, their ideas are filled with these high dreams in society, correct? That man was not really supposed to have. Instead, you were supposed to be satisfied with the gifts that God gave you, and to work the land and to serve the Lord. And economically speaking, this would make such an abundance of not only food but shelter. So the cost of living would be practically nothing if everyone followed these guidelines. Okay? If there were more laborers, if there were more workers, and less of the fantasy, and less jobs of the fantasy realm, entertainment, where we pay people to actually take our time rather than pay the farmer who is feeding us. You know what I mean? So it's not real. It's not of substance. It does not nourish the human body. So therefore, it is not economically progressive. And this is how, Christianity is much more than morals. It's the idea of like true knowledge. It's the idea of the way. It's the idea of like prosperity in mankind, economic even, technological, scientific, but just not that is of fiction and of fantasy, which does not progress mankind. And people argue, well, the Bible has a lot of fiction in it. It has a lot of things that aren't real, but not necessarily. Like, if you actually look at it, all of the references that did not happen. For example, there was a story about how a sheep fell into a pit, and and Jesus told that you have to help it on the Sabbath day. It's not that a sheep literally did fall in the pit, but it represents, he was speaking of the healers. So if a person is hurt on the Sabbath day, you still should tend to them. Like, it makes you, it is righteous. It's not that you can't, not work on the Sabbath day. You use your proper judgment and things like that. So, that one proverb I found, those who work the land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. And this is the idea that, what is real production and what really gives to society is that of the body and that nourishing the body. So things like food, things like doctoring, and also that's what it is. Well, upvote me. Not that, people want to hear about this, but it is very beneficial to mankind if they were to think this way, because it would progress mankind to build rather than to chase fantasy or the utopia that never was.